Hello there everyone, this is me Ethan here, and welcome back to another ranking video. It has been a while since I've done a ranking video on pretty much anything, but I thought as a celebration for hitting 3,000 subscribers on the channel, I would do a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and that is a ranking of every single film from Pixar Animation Studios. I've grown up watching Pixar, y'all saw my Inside Out 2 review. I've loved the studio and all the movies they've made over the years, and I've wanted to do a ranking video for so long, but I've just never gotten around to it. So today I'll be doing a tier list of every single film from Toy Story to Inside Out 2. So let's waste no further time and get right into it. And as you can tell, it's a little bit darker in my room. It's later in the evening. It's going to be a laid back, more relaxed video, but regardless, I'd like to thank you all for 3,000 subscribers. It means a lot to me, and let's get into it. First off, we have Toy Story, the one that started it all. Obviously, this film is revolutionary. We all know that. It's a pretty charming and honestly timeless film. It's a classic tale about someone being jealous of another person. I think it could be very relatable, very funny, and it just overall is a well-rounded film, and I have pretty much no issues with it. I think the animation is a little bit dated, but it's going in the A tier. Next up, we have Pixar's second film, A Bug's Life, and I honestly don't mind this movie. I think it's perfectly charming, it's a cute little movie, and it's pretty harmless. But that's really about all I can say about it. Once again, the animation is kinda dated. These first two Pixar films do have animation that's pretty dated. I didn't mind this movie too much whenever I was younger, it just wasn't ever my first pick, so I'm going to put it in C tier. Not at all a bad Pixar film, just a little bit forgettable and not the most exciting. Now we have Toy Story 2, and it's going straight in S tier. Even growing up, I preferred Toy Story 2 to Toy Story. I just love these characters so much, and I think they get a lot more time to grow in the sequel. I think there's fun additions with a bunch of new characters, even down to Wheezy, the binoculars, or actually he was in the first one, I take that back, but you obviously have the Prospector, and he is a fun villain. I love watching him. I think he's probably the best Toy Story villain out of all four films. I also love Jessie. She's a great character. That When She Loved Me sequence gets me crying every single time. I think it's more emotional than the first, it's even more mature than the first, and it just does an even better job at expanding upon its original concept, and I think it is S tier Pixar. And once again, another S tier Pixar film, we have Monsters, Inc. This is one of Pixar's greatest duos. Obviously, Sully and Mike Wazowski. The voice performances here are wonderful. The textures in the hair on Sully are so impressive. The relationship between Boo and Sully is adorable. The concept of what if the monsters in our closet were actually just trying to receive energy through children's screams is such a wild and imaginative concept. It's so charming. It works every time. It's a perfect voice cast, and I love revisiting this film. Next up, we have Finding Nemo, and this is a very important film to me. For my Santa gift, whenever I was 2 years old, I got a massive Nemo plushie, and I slept with it all the time. I rewatched this movie hundreds of times on DVD. I practically know every single line in this film, but I think this movie is just really, really good. It's a story about a grieving parent going to find his missing son, and that's both very tragic, and it lends itself to a very fun adventure. I think Dory is a great side character to Marlin. They bounce off really well. Once again, another great Pixar duo. Always loved Bruce the Shark. The adventure overall to Sydney is super fun. The animation is gorgeous, and I think it's overall just a very cute, heartwarming story while still having some tragedy to it at the same time. I'm pretty sure this film is largely considered everybody's favorite from Pixar. It's The Incredibles, and I'm going to put it right behind Monsters, Inc. I think this is honestly one of the best superhero films to come out ever. It's a great family film as well, but it's also just a great movie about a man in a midlife crisis, and he doesn't like the life that he's living. He prefers what he had whenever he was young, and I think there's a lot there for a Pixar movie just with Bob Parr alone. I love the concept of this, the idea of retired superheroes and society having to get rid of them. I think Syndrome is an interesting villain, as much as the MCU started to use his format more and more and it got kind of annoying. I think everybody here is having a blast. It's such a well-written movie, probably Pixar's best written movie in my opinion, and overall it's a great time every single time I watch it. And that score by Michael Giacchino, chef's kiss. This one probably has the most nostalgia appeal, at least for guys my age. It's Pixar's Cars, and I'm putting it in front of A Bug's Life in C tier. Now, I know some people may get upset by this. I know a lot of people really love Cars. I think it's quite overrated now. I grew up watching this movie just as much as all these other movies up here. I loved watching Cars. I collected the die-cast Cars for about a year while I was in my preteens or early tweens. Back when Cars 3 released, but I still love this movie. I think it's so much fun. It shows small town America in such a beautiful way. It's got a great message to it about kind of just slowing down and living life and not trying to live life in the fast lane. As much as it is simple, it is really, really effective. I think it's probably the most kiddie movie out of the original Pixar run, but I still really enjoy rewatching this. I recently got the Blu-ray, and I watched it on a Blu-ray for the first time, and I was like, whoa, Radiator Springs looks even better than I remember it on DVD. So overall, a great, charming Pixar movie, just not one of the best, in my opinion. And now what I would consider the best Pixar movie, or at least my favorite, it's Ratatouille. It's my favorite film of all time still. It's my #1 favorite movie. People are always surprised whenever I say Ratatouille is my favorite film, but it's 100% honest. I relate a lot to this movie, both through the lens of Remy and Linguini, the anxiety of Linguini and trying to live up to expectations, and the ambition and the artistry of Remy. I feel both of those characters, and I feel like I am them, kind of combined into one person. I love the atmosphere of France. The animation's obviously stunning, gotta say that again with Pixar. I think the voice performances are great, and overall I think it has a really, really strong message about art, trying to be an artist, being an artist, and being a critic towards art. It is overall a film about artistry, and it's always appealed to me, and it's always hit me emotionally every single time, and I think it's one of the most profound from Pixar. Next up, we have a film from Pixar that I actually didn't grow up liking that much, and it's WALL-E, and as I've grown up, I've learned to enjoy it a little more upon every rewatch. I always thought WALL-E was kind of boring whenever I was younger until the second half, where things really started to kick in high gear and there's way more dialogue, but as I've grown up, I've noticed just the incredible visual storytelling in that first half, and now that part is my favorite. You don't really need a lesson in filmmaking to understand why this film works so well, especially in its first half. But I think the message is still a little heavy-handed, a little too on the nose. Even though it is still a good message, I think it is a little bit much. Once again, animation's incredible. I think the story's really cute. It's Pixar's first romance film. I love the space environment. Overall, it's gotten better with age for me, and I can't wait to rewatch it in the coming years. Now we have Up, and this is going to be a controversial opinion, but I'm going to put it above A Bug's Life, but below Cars. Once again, another film that I grew up liking, but I like less as I get older. I think those opening like 10-15 minutes, similar to WALL-E, great visual storytelling. However, the entire adventure I'm just not super interested in. I think it's cute. I think Going to Paradise Falls is a really sweet story. I love Russell and Doug and Carl. I think Carl Fredricksen is one of the greatest Pixar protagonists, but I'm just not that excited about the story as I used to be with the talking dogs and getting there. I think the conversations between Carl and the kid, who I'm trying to remember his name, I think the conversations between them throughout are wonderful, but it just doesn't hit the same as it used to for me. Toy Story 3, once again, I grew up watching this film all the time. I believe this was one of my very first films to watch in the theater, and probably my very first 3D movie. I was so excited when this was about to come out. I'm actually going to put it behind WALL-E. Younger me would totally put Toy Story 3 way up high, probably his favorite Pixar movie. WALL-E wouldn't even be close to Toy Story 3, but I really enjoy Toy Story 3 still. It's probably my least favorite Toy Story film, which probably gives away my Toy Story ranking, but I think it is a solid conclusion to the Andy trilogy. I love the prison break aspect of this film. The cast still does a wonderful job, and overall, it's just a solid movie. I don't have much to say about it other than that. And before we move on, I'm actually going to put Toy Story in the B tier. These are the movies I consider 8 out of 10, so I'm going to put my 9 out of 10s right here. But we're not even close to there yet, because now we have Cars 2, and it's going straight at the bottom. I love this movie whenever it came out. I still think it is highly entertaining as a spy thriller, but it is a stupid sequel. It has nothing to do with racing or small town America like the original film. For some reason, it's a spy thriller starring the comedic sidekick of the first film, which just, first of all, makes no sense. It's clearly a marketing gimmick just to sell more toys. It's a really fun time. I know a lot of people really enjoy watching this movie, and so do I, but from a sequel standpoint, just from a film standpoint, it does not have a lot to say, and it is not a worthy follow-up to an otherwise really, really good Pixar movie. And Brave. I'm going to put this in D tier. This is probably the movie I've rewatched the least out of my original DVDs growing up. I really enjoy the atmosphere of this movie, but otherwise I find it totally boring and a pretty stupid movie from Pixar. It feels like them trying to replicate the Disney princess films, but with their own little spin on it. I've never really enjoyed it. I found the bear plot where the mom, turns into a bear to be just really weird and strange, and it's just never been for me. I know it's got its own fans, but it's not for me. Monsters University. Obviously, I grew up watching the DVD of Monsters, Inc. a lot. I was very excited for this movie, and I think it still holds up very well as the only Pixar prequel. I think this works as a prequel because Mike and Sully are such a great duo. You kind of want to see more of them, so to see how they met is really fun. I enjoy the college atmosphere. I think it's got a great message about, just being yourself and trying not to be someone else. It's simple and it's effective. Inside Out, a really, really interesting concept from Pixar. Once again, they always tugged on the emotions in their earlier films, so they decided to make a movie about our emotions. And I think this concept worked really well to see inside the minds of everybody and how our emotions process different things. I think they executed this in such a great way to visualize our emotions. It doesn't quite tug on the emotions for me as much as it does for others, but I still think it is a great original Pixar movie, and I'm going to put it right behind Toy Story 3. The Good Dinosaur. I remember walking out of the theater whenever this came out and just being utterly bored by it. It's not that exciting. It feels like it rips off The Lion King at times. Kind of funny how Brave and The Good Dinosaur are so close to each other right now, but visually stunning. That's the best thing I can give it, except for Arlo, who's this weird floppy green dinosaur in a hyper-realistic animated world. It looks amazing. It should have been so much better. Finding Dory, the not-so-much sequel to Finding Nemo. And this does what Cars 2 probably should have done, but probably couldn't. And this is a film about Dory over Marlin or Nemo, and it's kind of a reverse of Finding Nemo, where in Finding Nemo, you have a parent looking for his son, and in this film, you have a daughter looking for her lost parents. So it's kind of a flip on the original idea. I think I worded that all right, but I think this is a very great movie, especially for people who maybe did lose their parents. I know I probably can't relate to that, but I think it is a very profound movie, and surprisingly it works really well despite the fact that Dory is a fish with memory loss or short-term memory loss. It works really well about her regaining her memory over time, and I think it just works. I've always loved this movie. I've never really understood the hate for it, and I think it is a worthy follow-up to Finding Nemo, even though it isn't really a sequel. And another Pixar sequel in Cars 3, this is going in the D tier. Quite a big gap in between Brave and Cars 3, but Cars 3 is just okay. I was super excited whenever this came out, but it's just okay upon rewatch. It's not all that interesting. It's kind of trying to do a Rocky 3 situation with Lightning McQueen, but I never understood why all the characters treated him like an old man car whenever he still looks shiny and new, just like in the first movie. I've never understood that, but I think it's a decent conclusion, and it's certainly a lot better than Cars 2. Next up is Coco, and I think this is probably the most emotional I get during any of the Pixar movies. I think this was such a great concept to use Dia de los Muertos, and Pixar just knows how to tug on those emotions right in this holiday movie. I love to watch it every single fall. The animation's amazing. I think the story is just so well put together. And the story about Miguel trying to learn about his father and trying to learn about his history and music within his family. It's just all around a really warm film, and it's easy to love. Incredibles 2, not The Incredibles 2, but just Incredibles 2. That's always bugged me for a while. Whenever this first came out, I loved this movie, and at the time I said I loved it even more than the first movie, but looking back, I'm kind of insane for that, because this movie isn't a very good sequel. I just I haven't been able to latch on to it like I did originally. Maybe it was just the hype after all the time of waiting for an Incredibles 2, but I found the concept of like the screenslaver to be not as interesting as Syndrome. I think the focus more on Helen Parr was not as interesting as Bob Parr, and you leave Bob Parr at home just with some silly shenanigans with the kids. It's not as exciting, it's not as inventive, and it's a sequel that just falls flat for me. Toy Story 4, and this is probably a hot take, but I'm putting it in A tier above Finding Dory. I absolutely love Toy Story 4. I think it finished everything up even better after Toy Story 3, where the first three Toy Stories were more focused around Andy, while Toy Story 4 was more focused around Woody. I feel like if it wasn't called Toy Story 4, less people would dislike it because it paints it as a Toy Story movie, but I still love this movie. Obviously, the animation's a step up from all three of them. It's insane, but I love the focus on Woody and Bo Peep as lost toys and learning to find where they are in the world after they're no longer where they originally were. I moved around a lot as a kid. I moved from school to school, from place to place, and I had to say goodbye to my friends and where I was all the time, and I still have even 5 years on from this movie's release. So I felt this connection between me and Woody about learning, okay, where am I at this point in my life and the people that I'm around. I found that to be really, really interesting, and obviously Woody's character changes after Andy because he still wants to be a toy that's loved by a child, but he's learning that those days might be over and he might no longer be with the same people, or in this case toys, that he was before. And I related to that a lot. I think it's a beautiful message about moving on and the passage of time and who you're around, and I think it just works on almost every single level. I'm just not a big fan of Ducky and Bunny. I enjoy the fairground atmosphere, all that. The music's still wonderful, but overall, the second best Toy Story film in my opinion. Onward. I was so excited for this movie back in 2020. I never got to see it in the theater, and then it hit Disney Plus, and then I never checked it out. And when I did, it was just okay. What I really wanted from this film was just more from its world. It was so cool to see more fantasy era stuff from Pixar, but they just didn't do enough with its concept for it to win me over. So unfortunately, I'm just putting it in the C tier. I think Chris Pratt and Tom Holland are just okay in the role. I know Onward has its fans, and I understand why. The story about reconnecting with your past father is incredibly relatable for a lot of people I know, both online and in real life, and I think it's great if you can relate to this film and you love it. I am so happy for you, but this film just never really did it for me. I never related to it, and I wish it had done more with its concept. Soul. This came out at pretty much the perfect time. I mean, it wasn't released in theaters, but it released at the perfect time, right towards the end of 2020, where we all just needed a nice pickup film. And I think this film is just so beautiful. It's so wonderful. It's a great companion piece with Inside Out. I love Joe's character. I think he's such a fascinating and fun character. The only thing I don't like about the movie is the body swap thing. I think that's so weird and the only off-putting thing about this movie, but overall, I absolutely love revisiting this film. I think it's so special, and I know there are people who don't like it, there are people who love it, and I'm somebody who loves it. Luca, another great original Pixar film from the 2020s. I'm going to put it actually above Finding Dory, but not above Toy Story 4. This is the closest we've ever gotten to a Miyazaki movie not directed by Miyazaki. It's such a laid-back, fun summer movie about two kids just wanting to get a motorcycle, or a Vespa, or whatever you want to call it. I think it's such a fun concept with them turning into sea creatures as they get into the water, but turning into humans whenever they're out of the water. It creates some fun sequences. I don't think it has one of the best villains ever, but it's not really necessary because this is kind of just a hangout movie. I think it's so cute, it's so lovable, it's such a simple concept, and it works on almost every single level for me. Turning Red, I'm going to put this right above The Good Dinosaur and Brave because it just has a little more heart than both of these films, but I do not like Turning Red. I found this film to be incredibly annoying and just aggravating to watch. I was so ready for this movie to be over. I'm totally happy for you if you related to this film or if it means a lot to you. That's wonderful, but it didn't do like anything for me, and I found it to just be a deeply weird and uncomfortable watch. I think the mom is just over the top as a character, and I just found this movie annoying, and I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Lightyear, I'm going to put this just ever so slightly a notch above Turning Red. This film also annoyed me because they could have done so much more with the Buzz Lightyear movie. I grew up loving my Buzz Lightyear toy, and the concept of this film being this is the movie that Andy watched whenever he wanted his Buzz Lightyear toy makes no sense to me, because looking back, I wanted a Buzz Lightyear toy because of the Toy Story movies and his funny character, not this weird trying to be grounded interstellar sci-fi movie, and I feel like it honestly should have just been live action because of how hyper realistic it is. If you're gonna go that hyper realistic, you might as well just go live action. The whole point of animation is to be stylized, and there's hardly any style in this movie. I just found it to be super uninteresting. It's not very exciting. There's one sequence that's similar to Interstellar as time passes that's kind of fun, but it's just an idea that got totally lost in the gutter behind studio executives, and it's just not that good. It should have been so much better. Elemental, last year's Elemental. I'm going to put it slightly above A Bug's Life. Once again, similar to A Bug's Life, I think this is a cute little movie, but just overall kind of forgettable. It's got a decent story about the immigration for Wade, or Ember, excuse me. I think their relationship is really fun. It's probably the closest that Pixar gets to a rom-com outside of maybe WALL-E, which I enjoyed that aspect of it. I wish the world was more built out and better explained. It's about as well explained as the Cars universe, but overall, a decent little time. And finally, we have Inside Out 2, and this may be surprising for most, but I did like it better than Inside Out, but I'm going to put it above Coco, WALL-E, and Toy Story 3, which is even surprising for me because these two movies are pretty nostalgic for me at this point. This movie gets me teared up, and this movie just works for me, so to put Inside Out 2 above these four still feels a little bit weird, but honestly, I just related to this movie a lot more than I expected. I thought it was the most well-continued sequel from Pixar outside of the Toy Story films, and if you want to check out my full review and my full thoughts, I will link it up above. But overall, I had a blast with Inside Out 2. I thought it was funny, I thought it was a great sequel, and I thought it just worked and was much more relatable than the first for me, so for that reason, it is above those other films, and it's going in the B tier. So there is my entire ranking. I know Pixar holds a lot of emotions for many people, whether it be nostalgia or just the movies making you emotional even today. So just understand that these are just my opinions, and I would love to hear your ranking down in the comments section below. I'd love to see what your favorite and your least favorite Pixar movies are, so leave them in the comments section below. So if you all enjoyed this ranking and if you all enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will see you all in the next one. Bye and have a great day.